So I recently made a video titled Players with the Most to Prove this upcoming year, and I told you guys to let me know who I missed in the comments down below, right? And a lot of the suggestions I feel like were more so the most to gain, right? And I feel like there's a difference. And I will explain that difference, but before we do, we are less than 200 subscribers away from hitting 5K, and we got about 20 days until the regular season starts. If I can hit 5K before that, I would greatly appreciate it, so please subscribe. But the players with the most to gain this upcoming year, perfect example of the distinction between the two. A lot of the comments were saying Jayson Tatum. I don't feel like Jayson Tatum has anything to prove per se, but he has a lot to gain. If Jayson Tatum doesn't have a great year, I mean, he's gonna have a great year because he's Tatum, but if they lose in the second round, yes, people are gonna make jokes, but is that really gonna change his standing in the NBA? If he's healthy, he's gonna be at least a second team All-NBA guy. He's been a first team All-NBA last 3 years. His place is not really up for grabs, in my opinion. Maybe you could say, like, if the Knicks go on a run, or if Embiid, like, no one views Tatum as above Embiid already, right? So maybe Jalen Brunson is the guy that might, go a step above Tatum. But for the most part, his place is solidified. But I just mentioned Joel Embiid, right? Tatum has done far more winning than Joel Embiid, but no one ever puts Tatum ahead of Joel Embiid. I think another championship run from Tatum will start putting him in those conversations, right? If Tatum has another first team All-NBA season, another championship, and let's say he gets the Finals MVP this year, it's gonna get hard to start putting guys like Joel Embiid ahead of him. It's gonna be hard to not have him in conversations with, brace yourself, Kevin Durant. Another championship would have him enter that type of stratosphere as a player. I feel like right now, at this very moment, it seems inconceivable that Tatum would be in conversations with someone like Kevin Durant. But if he wins another ring and you look at his stats over the last 3 years, it becomes pretty undeniable really fast. And I know it seems crazy right now, and we always have the Tatum age jokes, right? But he's only 25. We're talking 10 years from now. I think more than likely Tatum is going to be regarded as someone like a Kevin Durant. There's going to be who's better, Tatum or Dirk, who's better, Tatum or Wade. And that still might be me putting too much of a cap on it. I don't see a world where, we compare him to, like, not as players, but he's on the Tim Duncan, Kobe level. But who knows? Again, he's only 25 years old. And if he goes out and wins a ring this year, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations about where Tatum might end up ranking all time, but that's a long way away. Next up, and this is going to be the only player that I had in the other video the most to prove, also the most to gain, I'm going to say Dame. Now, some people think I don't like Dame. I have no problem with Dame. My only thing with Dame is he gets the level of praise as guys like James Harden or Chris Paul or Westbrook without the same criticism. We never speak on Dame's low moments because we haven't had the all-time great expectations for Dame. But now that we're here, if he wins a championship, all that is gonna go out the window. We're never gonna mention those moments again. We're gonna mention the game winners, and we're gonna mention him being a champion. And all of a sudden, that might catapult him ahead of guys like Westbrook, ahead of guys like Chris Paul maybe. Probably not James Harden, right? Because the numbers are ridiculous with Harden, but it would put Dame in like a top 5 point guard of all time conversation, where right now I don't think he's that close to being in that conversation. And me saying that might sound crazy to you guys, but you gotta remember we're living in the moment. You gotta think about how these things will be perceived years down the road. So years down the road, when Dame is a top 20 scorer of all time, probably gonna retire 3rd all time in threes, he's gonna be up there for assists. I don't think it's far-fetched to say if Dame wins a ring that people might put him ahead of Chris Paul, like I just mentioned. Chris Paul, who I believe is in a top 5 point guard conversation, all of a sudden Dame would be in that. I know he's a 2-time MVP, but some people might make the argument Dame over Steve Nash. Like, winning a ring, we know how stupid it can be sometimes, but it does that for your legacy. And if Dame has that ring with the stats, with the moments, it can change the way we perceive his whole entire career. So Dame has a lot to gain, and he has a great opportunity to do it. All right, this next guy has been in the news recently. Big trade, Karl Anthony Towns. I'm not gonna go in depth on this one. Go watch my last video, but I guess I'm gonna explain it anyways. I compared this situation to Pau Gasol. Now, I know Cat is already an All-NBA player, already a multiple-time All-Star, already, regarded as one of the best big men in the NBA. But comparing him to Powell, at the time Powell got traded to the Lakers, the narrative around Powell was the narrative around Cat right now. Soft, not a winner. Then he goes to the Lakers, beats Tim Duncan in the conference finals, and goes toe-to-toe with KG in the finals. And again, it's not the perfect comparison because I guess Jokic would be this Tim Duncan, and we just seen Cat guard Jokic in the playoffs and everyone acts like it didn't happen. But go watch that video if you want a more in-depth take on that situation. But I do feel like Cat can really change the narrative around his whole career. And if they win a championship, which they are one of the favorites. But again, if you want more on the Cat situation, go watch my last video. Next up, and this one just might be me being a fan of this player, but similar to Dame in a lot of ways, Paul George. Except we remember Paul George's failures a lot. But as of right now, Paul George, I don't think he's necessarily underrated as a player. Like, it's hard to make that argument, but he has one of the more underrated careers, in my opinion, as far as accolades. And I'm about to give you an arbitrary stat, numbers that don't mean anything. I'm making this a theme of my videos, right? Just to illustrate my point. This doesn't really matter at all, but I think it's cool, right? Players to make 9 All-Star teams, 6 All-NBA teams, and 4 All-Defensive teams. Jerry West, John Havlicek, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, John Stockton, Karl Malone, David Robinson, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, Chris Paul, and Paul George. Now again, I'm cheating. Paul George has the lowest amount of all-defensive teams. Well, him and Karl Malone with 4. He's tied with Gary Payton for the lowest amount of All-Stars on that list. Again, I am cheating, but that is a crazy list. That is some of the greatest players of all time, greatest defenders of all time. And then you got Chris Paul, who I'm just saying that as, people don't believe in Chris Paul like that. I think Chris Paul is one of the greatest of all time. And then you got Havlicek. So besides Havlicek, Chris Paul, and Paul George, everyone else on that list is considered one of the greatest players of all time or one of the greatest defenders of all time. So I said that means nothing, so why did I even bring it up? Again, as I mentioned with Dame, as I mentioned with Tatum, winning a championship recontextualizes everything. If Paul George is the third option or even the second option and is putting up an efficient 20 points per game on a championship team, it's not gonna be, oh, Paul George won a ring like Gary Payton in Miami, right? No disrespect, but it's gonna be, they need Paul George to be great for them to win a ring. And if that happens, we're gonna look back at all these things. We're gonna look at, no one's gonna look at that list I just brought up, but we're gonna look at the all-defensive teams, the all-star teams, the all-NBA teams. We're gonna look at the fact that right now he's currently 10th all-time in threes made, and we're gonna look at his resume compared to a lot of other players that people might have above him, and it's gonna be hard to make that argument. I think it's already pretty hard to deny his resume, but we think of the 3-1 against Denver, even though Kawhi gets no blame for that, but Kawhi's already solidified. We think of all the failures of Paul George and not what he's done throughout his career. If he wins a ring, again, puts a whole different perspective on his career. All right, this next guy is really the epitome of what I'm saying because no one has any expectations for him. If he doesn't even make the playoffs this year, no one's gonna bat an eye at it. But again, has the opportunity to really change the narrative on his career. And I'm talking about Demar Derozan. And I keep repeating myself in these videos, but hopefully I'm making a distinction in the things I'm saying so you guys maybe see what I'm saying in a different light. But in a recent video, right, I said, or I posed the question, what if Demar Derozan's best moments are ahead of him? I don't think people have given that much thought because we've kind of written a book on Demar Derozan, his moments, his failures, LeBron, then Kawhi going there. And I will say this as a Demar Derozan fan, I feel like it's my responsibility to bring it up. It's always just put like, oh, they got Kawhi and won a championship. Nah, they got 3 new starters. They got Kawhi, they got Danny Green, which would have been the best shooting guard Demar had ever played with, or best player on the wing, I guess, when you consider two-way ability. And they got Marc Gasol, which would have been the best center DeMar ever played with. And then they got a different version of Freddie, and they got a different version of Pascal. So it wasn't just, oh, they substituted Kawhi and won a championship. No, I'm not saying DeMar would have won a championship, but I am saying that was not the same team. That was a much upgraded team. And as a Pelicans fan, I have to bring up what JV did in that game 1 of whatever LeBron series that was. Crazy, sold that game. But yeah, right now, DeMar DeRozan most memorable moments of his career are probably the game winners he hit in the regular season as a Chicago Bull. And those are great moments for sure. But let's envision a world where DeMar DeRozan helps lead this Kings team to a conference finals. A Kings team that hasn't won a playoff series in 20 years. That would add a lot to DeMar's legacy. Right now, DeMar DeRozan is a borderline Hall of Famer. I've made several videos talking about why I feel like he should make it, but you can't deny right now he is on the borderline. And I'm not saying him having a couple games in Sacramento should make him a Hall of Famer, but it might, because moments matter, and DeMar doesn't have those playoff moments, and I feel like he's in a perfect position to do it. I don't want to harp on it too much. Like I said, I've made a bunch of videos about DeMar DeRozan and this opportunity he has in front of him. But let's just say that does happen. They go to the conference finals, and DeMar, they never win anything, but DeMar gives the Sacramento Kings fan the most fun they've ever had in their lifetime, right? If you're 21 years old, might be the most fun you've ever had in your lifetime. And you get those moments, and then you look at his career. DeMar DeRozan's gonna finish at least top 12 all time in scoring. You know, the All-Star teams, the All-NBA teams. It might not even be done making All-Star teams. Who knows? Probably is done. But again, if he has those moments, if he has the playoff moment that we can point to in his career, which I feel like is more likely to happen in this situation than it ever really has been. And I know that sounds crazy considering he was on a 60-win team. But this is the most talented offensive team DeMar DeRozan has ever been on. He's never had two teammates as good as Fox and Sabonis, offensively at least. He's never had someone, well, he did have like Norman Powell back in the day, but he's never had all these guys, right? I was gonna bring up Malik Monk, but he's never had this much talent on a team to where he's not depended on as much, but he could be even more deadly as a weapon. So DeMar DeRozan really has a chance to, you can't erase his moments, you can't erase his failures, but you can make a defining moment, and you can be a Sacramento Kings legend, which doesn't sound that cool maybe to you guys, but being from the West Coast, like, that's pretty cool, right? And that's probably pretty cool for DeMar having that opportunity. So DeMar DeRozan, again, has a chance to change the narrative slightly on his career if he goes out with a bang in Sacramento. All right, now we're gonna go a little bit of a rapid fire round. First up, another guy I talk about often on this channel, so we're gonna make this one real quick. But Brandon Ingram. Now I was gonna make a full video on this, but then I remembered we were just in this place last year. Trey Murphy, well, first of all, they brought in James Borrego. All we heard was BI is gonna take more threes. That's why they brought in Borrego, get this free-flowing offense, right? Then Trey Murphy gets hurt in training camp, meniscus injury. So I'm thinking, okay, now no Trey Murphy all season. BI is gonna shoot more threes. Didn't happen. This offseason, oh, we're going more not five out because Zion, but pretty much 5 out. The floor is spaced, right? We're gonna need BI to take more threes. Trey Murphy hamstring injury. Now we're in the same situation. So I'm not putting too much stock in it, but if BI goes back to who he was 2-3 years ago, shooting 6 threes a game at 39%, maybe that makes a team really want him, really want to trade for him. Maybe that makes the Pelicans really want to extend him. As far as the other side of it, I don't really see any downside for BI. Like, he is who he is. People know who he is. They don't want to pay him. So I don't see his value going further down. So he has a lot to gain if he comes in this year and is just lights out from 3, which is a real possibility because we've seen it before. I'm just not putting my money on it, you know? All right, let's keep it moving. Klay Thompson. I'm not the biggest Klay fan, but I do feel like the last couple years of Klay has been significantly underrated. He's still been a nearly 20-point per game scorer. He's still been one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's still been adequate on defense, especially guarding bigger players. We've seen him guard Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown in the finals and not do a bad job, sometimes do a very good job. So if Klay goes to Dallas and wins another championship as the third option, I'm not sure, like, I don't think people are gonna catapult Klay up the rankings, but that would be huge. That would be huge if he leaves the Warriors to the Warriors who didn't want to pay him, at least in Klay's mind, the Warriors who didn't really want him, at least in Klay's mind, and I believe that's true. I believe the Warriors were just ready to move on, and rightfully so. But if Klay goes to Dallas and wins a ring, that's big. Now, he's probably not going to have the legendary moment like Ray Allen, but imagine Ray Allen never hits that shot in Miami. Like, yes, he still had a Hall of Fame career, but that moment was the biggest moment of his career. And again, Klay's not going to have a moment as big as that. But if he's hitting big shots in the finals as a Maverick, the legend of Klay Thompson grows a lot further than just being associated with the Warriors. So Klay has a lot to gain this year, really nothing to lose. If Klay's terrible, it's all good. Klay, great career, legend, all good. All right, speaking of the Warriors and Klay Thompson, I'm gonna go with Moses Moody. Now, this one might be a little bit of a stretch, but the Warriors all training camp have been hyping up Andrew Wiggins, and also all training camp, Andrew Wiggins has been out with an illness. Now, some people will make jokes, say Wiggins being soft, whatever you wanna do with that, you could do with that. All I know is he's been out all training camp, and all we've heard is great things about Moody in training camp. Now, unfortunately for Moody, that they have Pods, they have Buddy Hield, they have GP2, they have DeAnthony Melton, all viable options at the shooting guard position. But I believe all the hype toward Wiggins from the Warriors is them pretty much sending him a message that this is what we expect you to be. And if you're not that, you're not guaranteed minutes on this team. That's what I take from it. Maybe I'm wrong. But if that's the case and Moody can slide in and play more minutes at the 3, and really when you think about it, GP2 and DeAnthony Melton really make that more viable again, because they can do a lot of the 3 things, right? They get a lot of the steals and blocks and cutting on lobs, right? So Moody could be more of the shooting guard role, even though he's gonna be guarding 3s majority if he's taking Wiggins' spot. This is really just a reach for me, like I said, but I do think there's a chance Moody ends up being, he's probably not going to start on this team, but there's a chance he ends up being the 6th man on this team, especially if they feel like Wiggins is not getting the job done. You know Moody's going to do the things that Wiggins doesn't always do. We know he's capable of, but he doesn't always do. You never question Moody's effort. You know he's going to crash the boards. You know he's going to just be a hustle player, which the Warriors desperately need. And if he's knocking down his 3s, you know, that's a win-win. So small chance for Moody to have a big year here. Maybe just wishful thinking. Last one I'm gonna say, and this guy really has, I'm not sure how much he has to gain. Like, nothing's gonna change. This guy's a legend as well. But Russell Westbrook, the way his name has been slandered over the last couple years has been pretty bad, right? I'm not gonna say unjust. A lot of times it's been warranted, the criticism. It goes over the top for sure, but Russ has been very bad in moments, has been very good in moments, and he's in a place where he can really shine. And I only say that because we just seen the example in Bruce Brown. I'm not saying everybody can do that, but Russell Westbrook should be able to play that Bruce Brown role. He should be able to cut, he should be able to move the ball, he should be able to run in transition, he should be able to defend, right? And I don't know why, but it feels like for Russ, if he gets a ring as a role player, it would hit more than other stars getting rings as role players. I don't know why, but I feel like a Russ ring as a role player would hit more than a Harden ring as a role player. I don't know why I'm doing that in my head, but that's what we're going to call the video. Let me know in the comments down below who you feel like has the most to gain in the NBA this year. Let me know if you disagree with the ones I mentioned. Let me know if you agree with them. And again, we are less than 200 subscribers away from hitting 5K. If we can get that in the next 20 days or so, we will be able to complete the goal I had this summer, get to 5K before the start of the regular season. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.